Hello.
What's going on, guys?
There he is.
What's up, motherfucker? Oh, shit.
All right. Well, for those that don't know, because for those that don't know,
Needing to mute.
so we are
computer.
we're going live right now on YouTube and our Facebook group, horror movies of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, which Paul started. When did you start that, Paul? 2018?
I want to say it's been a couple of years. I want to say it's 3 years old.
Really? Okay. And then he made me a co-admin, and right now that group is up until 30K members. It's probably one of the best horror groups on Facebook I've ever seen. And Mr. Chris Grossnickel,
That's right.
who is our main man in California, of course, is a award-winning artist for legacy effects. He's been trolling our Facebook group for years.
I just like dropping little nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you gotta educate the masses and let them know when they're wrong. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
anyway.
I think Chris and our first conversation was me and him fighting. So
I will admit, when I came into the group, I came in a little hot. I think it was right after I saw The Last Jedi, so I was not in a good fucking mood.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. I mean, that would put anybody in a foul mood, for sure.
I keep trying to adjust my camera so that I'm centered because it's really bothering me. But
yeah, man, do what you got to do.
All right.
But anyway, this is a long time coming. We've been talking about doing something like this for a long time, so this is pretty cool. It's pretty exciting, and this is going to be episode 1 of first of many of the Gory story, where you get our perspective on, pretty much all things horror. So
yeah, give us at least 15 to 20 episodes to work out all the bugs.
Yeah, seriously. It's
I
going to be a comedy of errors tonight, I'm sure. But anyway, tonight we're doing our personal top 5, or I don't know. We don't have to really narrow it down, but basically what we consider the most influential horror films from the timeline of our Facebook group, which is the 60s through the 90s. And Dan Driscoll, I have a feeling this is Chris's boy.
Oh man, that's my buddy. Yeah.
He says Last Jedi rolled, idiot.
No, he fucking hates it too. He's lying.
But anyway, yeah. So we're just gonna, I don't know, see what we think about the top horror films of those years, and who wants to start it off? Chris?
Well, before we get into the first movie, man, let's just give it up for horror in general, man. I mean, how it shaped our lives, and let us all into this group, right. And what it's done for us, how we passed it on to friends, family, our children.
Yep.
I mean, I've been watching horror films since I was 3 years old, 2 years old. I remember the original Salem's Lot scaring the shit out of me, and me telling my mom until I was 10 that I didn't want to sleep with my curtains open because Salem's Lot was going to come and get me.
Right.
So
you got to see my black and white of that, man. It's amazing.
Oh man, I love your black and whites. Your black and whites are absolutely amazing. You should market them more. I don't know if they'll come after you for that, but they're amazing. Your Dawn of the Dead's really good.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, I mean, along with your saying, none of us would know each other if it wasn't for horror, and that includes me and Paul.
Yeah.
None of us would have crossed paths if it wasn't for our interest in horror, and definitely shaped me from a young age, being exposed to it. When I was a teenager, and it's just. It's been a passion ever since. It's pretty cool to talk about it in this kind of format with you guys.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, man. I'm just going to go right into it. Let's just talk about the guide. Let's talk about Night of the Living Dead.
We're going to jump right in, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I figured this. Let's start with the 60s. If any of us have something from the 60s, let's talk about the 60s first. Then let's get into the 70s.
I'm all 60s and 70s as per
you. Oh, that's great. That's great. Wow, look at that. What a fucking movie, man. I mean, what can you say about Night of the Living Dead that hasn't already been said? I mean, it is a perfect film. Even the accidental choices that they had to make for budget constraints worked for the film, made it better. All these things just lined up to make that movie what it was, which is a perfect fucking film.
Absolutely. You just go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was going to say, Night of the Living Dead is number 2 on my list, but my list is chronological. So,
yeah, I guess we should get that out of the way. I also have it on my list.
I think everybody.
I think we all do. I didn't really do an official 5, but it's probably number 1 for me.
Yeah, like it's only number 2 on my list because it's the second movie to come out on my list. But honestly, if you look at horror movies in general, you can draw a line of before Night of the Living Dead and after Night of the Living Dead, and you'll have that. Like that is pretty much the birth of the contemporary genre for me. I mean, when I started the group horror movies of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, I was originally just going to do 70s, 80s, and 90s, but I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to have a horror movie group where I can't talk about Night of the Living Dead. It's just not going to happen. So
yeah,
I decided to go with like the end of the Hays Code, which was like 57, being like the group starting time point. So, but they didn't really explore the end of the Hays Code until like 1960 with Psycho and Peeping Tom. But Psycho isn't on my list. I feel like it probably should have been, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Psycho. I like Hitchcock's thrillers a lot more. But Night of the Living Dead. Oh my gosh. Train of thought. It's been a long Friday. Night of the Living Dead is, like that point in horror films. There really wasn't anything like it before, where it was done in like almost quasi documentary style of film.
Yeah, it's almost like guerrilla filmmaking.
And it opened the door for independent cinema, so that movies could come later, like Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and John Carpenter's Halloween, all pretty much made these independent distributors profitable, and let that got Hollywood out of the studio system, and it got it out of Hollywood even. I mean, it's filmed 15 minutes from my house, so. But yeah, Night of the Living Dead. Gentlemen, I'm talking too much. Cut me off.
No, you're good. Your backdrop's awesome, by the way. Do you have a different backdrop for each film?
No, but I could.
I was like, whoa, he really.
I just picked it because it's close.
I was like, Paul's going hardcore first.
So would Night of the Living Dead be like one of the original? Would you consider it Grindhouse? I know it led to the Grindhouse era of the early 70s.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely more drive-in than Grindhouse.
Definitely has that grimy feel to it, though.
But it does have that feel to it where this movie would not be approved by corporate America in 1968.
It's sleazy.
It's definitely sleazy.
And I mean that in the best way possible.
Well, there isn't a bad way to describe sleazy for me, but and we all know what I watch, so it'll be on my list. But yeah, Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, well, it was like, but yeah, it did kind of play in these like little mom and pop theaters, and because the distribution was cheap because they didn't have to pay Romero anything for it. So that was, I think it kind of led to it. Do you think that this movie would be as influential if Romero controlled the rights and made a ton of money off it? Do you think that, because, part of it was that anyone could distribute it because of the copyright error that was made?
I don't know. I never specifically linked its like place in pop culture necessarily with that error that they made, but
I mean, it helped exposure.
It definitely helped exposure, but absolutely. I mean, that definitely could have.
Because he would have had to have a marketing budget and all that stuff to get it. He would have limited prints.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it was a smash hit when it first came out as well.
So he doesn't make any money off it, and it just languishes out there, forever. And because he can't make money off it, he can't do the sequel. So he goes and he just, for years, he's, back doing low budget independent films and commercials. Yeah. And then we get Dawn of the Dead. Would we have gotten Dawn of the Dead earlier? Or would he have had the money to do his script that he wanted to do for Day of the Dead because he cut it in fucking half?
If you see some of his filmography, like prior to Night of the Living Dead, like he did like a comedy. Like I don't know if he would have just been strictly a horror director, had A, Night of the Living Dead not taken off like it did, but also B, he lost the rights to it. So I mean, I personally think that led to his decision to even make the sequels, to recoup his losses, at least with Dawn. To recoup the losses of the money he could have made with Night of the Living Dead. I think there's a 50-50 chance we never get Dawn of the Dead had, the copyright issue not happened.
Oh, look at this scene right here. There it is, man. There's the fucking scene.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, man. You don't even see anything. There's no blood. There's just eye contact. You see fucking eye contact, and you know what's about to go down, and that terrifies the shit out of me, man.
Yep. Yeah. She thought she's being rescued by her brother. Little did she know.
That is just so fucking horrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
By the way, that was that running zombie. I don't care what Romero says. That motherfucker's running in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, he was running in the beginning. Like the roles of the zombies have kind of changed.
Well, there was an interesting fan theory that I read with the first zombie, was that he was attacked and he hadn't fully turned yet. And he was trying to steal her car to get medical attention.
Oh, I don't buy that. That dude's a zombie.
Yeah.
That dude is a straight up zombie in the beginning.
Yeah, that's like that's a jacket they bury you in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that ruins the scene for me if that's true.
Hey man, if there's anybody out there with money, my God, how fucking great would it be? And you're gonna need some money, but to do a prequel story about Ben coming across that diner. And just have it centered around an earlier version of Ben and centered around the stories that he tells you about in Night of the Living Dead.
I think Rian Johnson's available. He's pretty good with legacy movies. Maybe he'll. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's a great movie. Me and Paul actually talked about that like years ago. How cool that would be to kind of do a story with Beekman's Diner and just. Told from Ben's perspective.
I mean, how many people die in that diner? I mean, it's a bloodbath.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Custer's Last Stand in a fucking diner surrounded by 100 zombies.
Yeah. Yeah, how he describes it too.
Old, like, well, they're like the old diners where they were like essentially like mobile home, but businesses where you could tip a diner. So there's a lot of those that were around, especially this part of the world.
Your buddy Dan says the special edition added scenes show him in a coffin.
Yeah, okay. The Russo cut. That thing pissed me off so bad.
That's the same actor, right? They got the same guy.
I heard about that. Yeah, I heard about that. And then you know what's funny, because then he do the Flesh Eater or something years later. He like tried to start his own franchise playing that ghoul, the actor.
Yeah.
And it's like terrible. It's on Tubi. I'm like everything is.
I'm sure it's better than Survival of the Dead.
Yeah, well, right. Or Land of the Dead, for that matter. It's like still one of my biggest cinematic disappointments.
Yeah, that one was pretty hot.
That and Phantom Menace. You flip a coin. I was sitting there going, in the first 10, 15 minutes, going, this movie isn't going to be this bad throughout the duration, right? And about 30 minutes later, I was like, oh my God, it is. It's going to be this bad.
Just going to go with it. And because you already brought it up as well, so I'd rather just talk about it now instead of coming back to it. And I'm throwing them all out there. It's not like this isn't my favorite subgenre in the genre, because it is, but I'm going to go with another zombie film that was very, very influential, and that's Return of the Living Dead. And goddamn, man, released in the summer of 1985. And on a personal note, my father was, as I recall. Oh, there it is. So my father's a fan of Night of the Living Dead, and he sees the trailer like a week before the movie opens, and my birthday was coming up. And he's like, hey, do you want to go see that for your birthday? And I was like, yeah. So he took me for my 9th birthday on opening weekend to see Return of the Living Dead, and it changed my fucking life, man. It was just like, man, I was casual with horror films up to that point, and that just cemented my love for the genre and for this fucking movie, man. It is so good. It's so fun. And the story is so well written that you don't even care about the subpar scenes with subpar special effects. Not subpar scenes, but subpar special effects, especially compared to Day of the Dead. In Day of the Dead, we get like a fucking masterpiece and a master class on gore effects. And as good as Return of the Living Dead is, it definitely lacks what Day of the Dead had or has in gore effects. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the story's so good. The acting is so good. Those characters are so well written. You believe them.
I don't think that there is a horror comedy that excels as a comedy and excels as a horror movie better than Return of the Living Dead. I mean,
there might be one other. There might be one other, and it might be on my list, but we'll get to that later. But no, but it is a perfect balance of horror and comedy.
It really is.
It is, and it like really, sets the tone, like the tone of the comedy. Like the scenes are funny, but it doesn't stop being scary. Like it uses humor to, the humor doesn't dilute any of the horror in it, and like, like my favorite scene where the yellow zombie busts out and he hits him with the pickaxe, and, it's like a really intense scene, and he hits him with the pickaxe, but he's like naked and screaming. And then he's like, you got to hit him in the brain. He's like, I hit the fucking brain.
Why is he yellow, by the way?
I would assume it was overexposure to embalming fluid.
Yeah.
It's a sort of sequel to Night of the Living Dead. It's like the meta sequel that never should have been as good as it is. It's such a classic movie. It doesn't, on paper, it doesn't sound like it should work.
Yeah.
A meta sequel to Night of the Living Dead.
And one that Romero didn't want to happen.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I read Russo's novel of it, and like, it's not nearly as good as the movie we got. And I think Dan O'Bannon has a lot to do with that. And Dan O'Bannon, of course, wrote Alien, which I didn't get to in my top 5 list, although I felt like it should be there. But Dan O'Bannon is like one of the best writers Hollywood ever had. That's like one of the most unsung writers. But he was just like, he made this movie and it's its own thing. It can be used as a sequel to Night of the Living Dead if you want it to be. And you can have it as a standalone movie and just watch it like,
But it references Night of the Living Dead, though.
Yeah.
So like, you can't say that it's not. It can't really ever be a 2 standalone, because the origin of trioxin and the zombies are supposedly the true story of Night of the Living Dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine meeting someone who had never seen Night of the Living Dead but saw this, but I'm sure that they exist.
I bet it happened. I bet it happened in the 80s. You know?
Hey, I got to tell you, man, being a 9-year-old coming back from the theater, I ran down to my friend's house and I was like, dude, I just saw this movie and that shit really fucking happened.
I don't think, and you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, because, while I was doing some research before the show, I was like watching some trailers and whatnot. It was never advertised as a sequel to any of Romero's films. It was never even advertised to have a connection.
Yeah.
And legally, wasn't this at the point where Romero had lost the rights to, like, he couldn't even he lost The Living Dead. Well, I guess he lost that I guess he lost that in the 70s.
Yeah.
With Dawn of the Dead.
He still took him to court, though. Like,
but
before
Russo
the movie,
retained it, so his movies could still be called Living Dead.
I don't remember why, but the movie was on the shelves for like a whole year. They actually finished it in 84, and I think it was going to come out in 84, and it just sat there and didn't come out for almost a full year.
Wow.
I think they shot it, and they wanted to release it in 84, and then it didn't come out till 85.
I think they were having distribution problems with it, too. Because who ended up putting this out? Was it Orion?
Yeah.
But Paul,
all right.
what's yours?
So I'm going to go with my number 1 on my chronological list. And mine's from 1963. It's The Haunting, Adam's least favorite movie ever made.
I mean, it's great when I want to take a nap.
Yeah. So this movie is crazy influential because as adult as some of the content is in Psycho, which was 2 or 3 years before, this movie would have probably resulted in jail sentences for the filmmakers. It's got a very interesting story where the main character, the protagonist, is in love with a married man and a woman is in love with her. And that's the driving force in the story for the tensions, for the characters that are experiencing it. It's completely driven by sound effects and light effects. It's, arguably the greatest haunted house movie ever made. Now, it really, but yeah, in terms of pushing the code and dealing with like sex and sexuality, I mean, it's a landmark film.
Has one of the first like depictions of like lesbian courtship in it, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It has lesbian courtship in it, and the lesbian isn't a villain. That's
Right.
another thing that's interesting about
Yeah,
it.
not demonized for it.
Yeah, like it's just treated as in a very matter-of-fact way, because the author of the book of which it's based, The Haunting of Hill House, was actually a lesbian. And but in terms of progressive films, I mean, it's so ahead of its time in that aspects of it, but it's also like it changed a lot of the way men and women had relationships in movies too. You know, with the subplots of the characters, and you started to see like men viewing women as not just a romantic interest. There was like a desire to work with them. It's outlandishly influential in terms of like all of cinema, because it dealt with these things in a way that, you know, was very matter of fact, very non-judgmental. It's a very secular film too. Like the idea of a haunted house was interesting on a scientific perspective, whereas it's not guided by any religious forces or anything. This is a science experiment and a science expedition to look into the possibility of life after death or survival after death and spirits. You also have the stories involved, whereas the main character shares something interesting with a victim of the house, where she wanted to have her own life and be single and have her own apartment, but she was forced into taking care of her parents, which was a very normal thing, an expected thing for women of in that time period, that they should put their lives on hold and service their parents or get married and service their husbands. So, and Nell didn't want any of that, you know, and she uses this as a way to get away from her domineering sister, and who's been married, and her own guilt from whether or not she let her mother die. So yeah, I got my 1 and 2 in. Chris has 2 in.
No, Chris, you did.
You have 3 in, Chris.
Yeah, I just vomited them all out because they were mainly zombie films.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck it, man. I'm just going.
All right. Well, why don't I throw something out there then? Well, I'm going to do one that I know isn't going to be on either of your lists.
Oh.
Well, you already know what our lists are because you got the clip.
Oh, that's true. All right. Well,
so it's not like it's a surprise.
We're playing characters, Paul. Like, we're not supposed to know each other's list. All right. So one of the movie that I chose, one of my top 5 is American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
Woo! Now, there's a few reasons why I picked this one. First of all, I think that before you even get into like pecking order of where it is and like where greatest werewolf movies of all time, which to me, and I know you guys disagree, I think it's number 1 by a wide margin. But I also kind of feel, because you got to remember, this became before Return of the Living Dead and a lot of these other movies. It's kind of the godfather of the comedy horror film. there wasn't anything really remotely like this one.
Not on that level of comedy, no.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's truly, meatballs or like Stripes, like that kind of comedy mixed with actually really horrific scenes, as we're about to see. I think, for my money, the dream sequences alone are scarier than almost anything in any other werewolf movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, and that's not even getting into the special effects, which, I'm sure we could make an entire show.
Humor in it. Especially like something like House on Haunted Hill.
Very true. Very tongue-in-cheek humor.
And there was an element of humor to it, but at the end of the day,
even some of his Edgar Allan Poe adaptations.
Yeah, and like the Black Cat is absolutely hilarious because it's Peter Lorre and Vincent Price talking shit to each other, and Peter Lorre trying to kill Vincent Price for giving him all the money he wants to drink, but he has to sleep with his wife, but was so that Vincent Price can sleep with his wife, which is an amazing story. It's one of my favorite anthology segments ever. But yeah, there's there were elements, there were some stuff in the 60s where they were adding humor to horror movies, but it wasn't like this. Yeah. Whereas this comedy,
I hate how the one thing I don't like is how he breaks the fourth wall right here.
Yeah,
that always kind of bothered me.
Well, I don't like this scene. I don't like this part of the transformation because he looks like those goons in that Popeye cartoon. That Popeye fights on that island with those rings of hair around their neck.
Yeah,
but this just changes the fucking game right here, man.
My God, was Jen, man. That was Jen, by the way. That was our friend Jen. It comes up as it doesn't tell you the name of the person commenting when you look at it on StreamYard, but that's Jen. From the group that was making those comments.
But yeah, I think where I feel like the movie, there's very few times where the horror movie, like during a horror scene, the comedy is there. Maybe, the scene leading up to the adult film transformation, where Jack has all of the people he killed sitting there with him, and they're all responding to him.
Right.
Woo!
Do you guys also have this on your list?
I do not.
I do. No, I am curious, Paul. So I think Adam and I both feel like, as a subgenre, this is the creme de la creme of slasher films. And with you being, with you rating the slashers subgenre real high, why not? I'm just curious.
I have a slasher movie on mine, but I picked the first slasher film. So, so once we get to my list,
okay,
I'll probably do that one after this.
Okay.
So, but Halloween is definitely influential, or it's definitely great. I don't know how much I would say it's influential though. And I was trying to pick stuff that influenced other movies. I
think Halloween is influential?
In some way. I mean, it came out towards the middle of the slasher boom and the slasher craze. So, and I think it's probably pound for pound the best slasher film. But I don't know so much about its influence because everything.
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean it came out during the middle of the slasher boom?
Well,
it came out in the very beginning.
Yes, I mean the slasher.
Not if you go back to Texas Chainsaw.
The slasher, like Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw, kind of started off the whole slasher craze. Mm-hmm. Then you started to see don't answer the phone, don't go in the house, don't look in the basement. I mean, those movies were all kind of, those movies were all before Halloween. Hot Tub Kill in Halloween 2 is probably like.
Hey, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
I decided to bless you with my presents, even though I don't have any makeup on, and I was about to take my pants off and eat a chalupa.
Well, you just added some
we're
class to this
so feel free
podcast.
Class.
Yep.
Paul, that's interesting. You were talking about how this movie scared you, because that's something I try to do with my nephews, is get them to understand the special effects and all that fun stuff so that they're not scared. But Miranda, that was
not on my list. It's not on my list.
What's the actual topic of the list?
The
most influential horror film.
5 most influential horror movies.
Ah, that's a tough one.
Yeah,
There's
it was.
So many.
I never even got out of the 70s, so.
I heard you mention Night of the Living Dead, and that is obviously the ground zero.
Yeah,
I agree. With Halloween though, it's to me the creme de la creme of the slasher subgenre. But obviously, it owes a lot to Black Christmas and what Bob Clark did in 1974 with that.
Sure.
I mean, Black Christmas is a fucking terrifying film, and we still don't know who the killer is.
Yeah.
You watch the remake.
The whole thing is that.
Fuck that remake.
The first one or the second one?
Both of them.
The most recent one was really rough.
Like, I don't like the Friday the 13th franchise would not exist if Halloween didn't come along. I don't know if you could say that for Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just as influential, if not more so. However, I don't know if it has any direct correlation with like Friday the 13th or Sleepaway Camp or The Burning. I think that's all more directly related to this film.
Well, The Burning is more Friday the 13th,
which was inspired by Halloween.
Well, here's the thing, though, with Black Christmas, though, is that John Carpenter originally viewed Halloween as a spiritual sequel to Black Christmas, and he asked Bob Clark for permission to kind of make it a sequel. That's why there's the little homage of the strangled face in his fist in the poster.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But let's go with I want to hear Paul call Jaws a horror film.
Woo!
Oh, I was going to go with my next pick, which was Twitch of the Death Nerve, Babe.
Well, this is on your list too.
Jaws is on my list. It is the proto for the animal horror or natural horror.
I agree.
I agree too, Jen.
Natural horror film. Granted, every movie that follows it ups the horror element to it. Much like the opposite of Silence of the Lambs, which downplays the horror element of serial killers up until 7. Ups the horror in that. But Jaws is a horror movie to me.
It is. And was Alligator after Jaws?
Alligator was after. It was a clone. Grizzly, clone. Everything follows the Jaws formula.
Orca, Prophecy, Night of the Lepus.
That
Piranha.
newer one, Crawl, was actually pretty good.
I like Crawl a lot.
And the Meg.
That's Olivia's favorite. My daughter Olivia, for the people watching, that's my daughter's favorite horror movie. Is Crawl. She says it's number one. Yep.
That's
Does
a
she
good
have
movie.
a favorite older horror movie?
Night of the Living Dead.
Good girl.
Yes. Paul, you're doing something right.
Did you show her Night 90 yet?
Huh? No,
she's
I haven't
seen-
done Night 90 yet. She hasn't watched that one yet, but I just got her to watch one the other day. Oh, she watched Creep Show the other day with me.
Nice.
I would love to hear her thoughts on the Night 90 remake since she loves the original so much. Can she join us?
I think she might be asleep.
And what about how'd she like Creep Show?
She loved Creep Show.
I heard yelling up.
Oh God, here she comes.
Look at me just
Also,
fucking your shit up.
we're watching that scene in Jaws that is absolutely a horror scene.
Yeah,
It is. It's very much like Piranha.
But when you look at horror movies before Jaws, it's along the same type of pacing as like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's long periods of not horror happening.
Suspense.
You know, and actually has more people die than Texas Chainsaw Massacre in Jaws. Jaws has a higher body count.
Was Piranha before or after Jaws?
After.
Every
It looks rougher than Jaws.
Every animal horror movie is
every single one.
Is like from this up until I would say, with the exception of maybe Willard, tends to follow the Jaws mentality. And even other movies that aren't animal horror tends to follow Jaws as like its blueprint. Alien was pitched as Jaws on a spaceship. And what's the other big one? That Predator was Jaws in the jungle, so it
Friday the 13th was Jaws in the woods. I'm not buying this, and now nobody said that.
What?
So, all right. So, Jaws definitely has horrific moments, for sure.
Yes.
And that's
the
a horrific moment that I think inspired. What?
Nobody would go in the water after Jaws. It's a horror movie.
No, absolutely. No, I totally get it. Like that was, and in that way, I mean, people wouldn't go to the beach for years. I totally get it. And there are horrific scenes in that movie, but like if you do like a compare and contrast to like Jaws and Piranha and Jaws and Alligator, Jaws and Grizzly, like there's definitely a more emphasis.
The horror, but that's like saying Halloween isn't a slasher movie because there's it's not really bloody and gory. It's that it's super influential. And like possession movies,
I still enjoy it. I think it's.
I enjoy it. And think about the timing of this movie. Like this was back in the day where you were gonna get pregnant and go to hell if you had sex before you were married.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this is like hardcore religion time.
Even if you're not real, I mean, you can relate to the characters. At least I do. Like even if you're not quote unquote a religious person.
Yeah.
Like Father Karras, for example, he's a priest. Doesn't get much more religious than that. But even he is like questioning his own faith.
And his mother issues.
Yeah, and it's like it's so relatable, especially if you're a person that grew up raised a certain way. So you got that going on, and not only is the exorcism and everything fascinating or like terrifying, but it's also like fascinating. Like if this, it's not too far to like suspend your disbelief to believe that something like this could happen. I mean, millions of people.
Well, it is based off a true story.
Right. You know, so it's like
a way to show the end of the movie.
Spoiler.
Wait,
the priest died? Thanks, Adam.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
Back in 3.
So it's not a spoiler.
No, I like Exorcist
The Brad
3
Dora
a lot.
one. I really appreciate 3 a lot more today than I did back then.
Really well done film.
Brad Dora's amazing in that.
Yeah, that would be a good double feature for us to do, Adam, one night, is to do Exorcist 3 and Psycho 2. 2 sequels that shouldn't have been made.
I was going to say, I don't disagree. I would watch those 2 movies any night of the week. I didn't get the theme, but
2 sequels that probably shouldn't have been made, but I'm glad that they were.
Yeah. We'll fly Chris and Jen can come over too.
Yay! We can go to the gym first.
Now, what about all the films that The Exorcist inspired? Like Beyond the Door 2,
right?
Amityville 2, The Possession, which is probably out of all the ripoff films, Amityville 2 is probably the best one out of all the films that took that Exorcist theme.
Is that
Beyond the Door 2 is not an exorcism movie, and it's a possession movie. Have you seen it? Shock. It's also called Shock, and it's an Italian horror movie that capitalized on the popularity of Beyond the Door and exorcism things, but it has more in common with The Evil Dead than it does like The Exorcist. There's not an exorcism in Beyond the Door.
You can kick me off at any time since I'm fucking up your
No, not at all.
I keep trying to, but my rights have been relinquished.
That's the face hugger.
Mommy, I want the stuffed animal. I don't like that guy.
What happened to my stuffed animal? Did you take? Oh, it's up there. Oh, it's on your picture.
So we've talked about a lot of movies tonight that like kind of like created genres. Like Night of the Living Dead created the zombie genre as we know it. You know, there were zombie films before it, but they weren't like Night of the Living Dead. Did this basically create sci-fi horror? Like
modern sci-fi horror? Yes.
Like what would you even?
What
consider?
about Space Odyssey?
There were B movies in the 50s and 60s, which I personally have great affection for, but I can't sit here and call any of them horror films.
What about Twilight Zone?
If I had a time machine, one of my first stops would be to go see an early screening of this and watch the scene with the chest burster coming out on an unsuspecting audience.
I have to tell you guys a story. Paul, you already know this. So my dad took my mother to see this. And I have to remember, when did this come out?
79.
79?
May 25th, 1979.
May 25th. Okay. I was born on May 4th. And so this was like the first thing that my mom got to do, like in a while, you know, after having me or whatever. But she is she watches like Gone with the Wind and shit like that.
She took her to see this for her first date night out after a baby.
He told her, listen to this. He was like, I want to go see this movie. And she was like, I don't know. Like she saw the poster, right, of just the egg and the light shining through and everything.
Yeah.
And she was like, that looks scary. I don't think I want to see that. And he was like, he told her that it was just like E.T. And that's how he got her to go to the movie theater. So she's sitting there. I mean, she had to have a C-section because I was bastard and didn't want to leave. So days after having a C-section, she has to watch this chest burster scene of like this, like,
well, the alien
like poke its way through, and it's like,
Yeah, she's like, oh, I just did that.
Right. I was the xenomorph.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Such a great
so film. Still together. That I do like that.
Jen does like some dome.
It's a great, great dome. It's a great shot, man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Alien is like a top 5 horror movie for me. And like favorites and best. And I love Alien so much.
It's a top 5 horror movie for you. Didn't you just say it wasn't in your top 5?
It's not in my 5 most influential.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see.
No, you're right. No, you're correct. I stand corrected. That is different.
Yeah,
it is different, and the only reason my 5 is what it is because
you having a stroke?
I'm sorry.
I'm hanging, dude. I'm waiting.
Yeah, it isn't. It's because like I ran out of time. And I was just like, okay, so here's my 5 influential, and then I figured we would do a sequel to the show, 5 more influential horror movies, and I could like expand upon because I never got to the 80s, I never got to the 90s. I was
maybe we should do the top 5 for each decade.
I did the 60s and 70s, and I was just like, and only half the 70s because Jaws is 75 on your list.
Yeah, it's been 2 hours. It's taking you guys this long to go through 15 movies.
Well, do you know us?
It's amazing.
You should keep that to yourself.
Really cathartic.
Yeah. What are we looking at right now,
Oh,
guys?
look at this. Woo!
Oh, the Thing.
Okay, so I'm going to start this out hot, and I'm going to say The Thing is not a remake.
Oh,
I never saw the original one from the 60s.
50s.
Real quick, Jen, let me tell you what the original is about, and you tell me if you think it's a remake or not. So in the original, an alien crashes into an Arctic climate. Scientists dig him out and take him back to their base. And then the alien kills everyone in their military science base.
No, it's not a remake.
Because it's a singular alien.
Well, that, and they intentionally brought the alien back to camp. They didn't know this was an alien, even though that's what they say.
Serious?
When they're on the plane at the beginning.
Thanks, Jen.
It's absolutely a remake. It's absolutely a remake.
No, it's not. It's just like how
what did I do wrong?
Stoker's Dracula is.
You
not
didn't
a
agree with
remake
me.
of
You agreed with Paul.
33.
That's what was wrong.
If what I'm hearing is correct, in the original, they intentionally brought an alien to their base camp. They are not intentionally bringing an alien to their space camp here. They find a stray dog.
They intentionally brought him to the Swedish camp.
Yeah, and did you know? I'm sure you know. And when they're talking in Swedish at the beginning, when the helicopter is chasing the dog, they're saying that it's an alien or something, but it's in Swedish. So nobody fucking knows. And right. Adrienne Barbeau is also the voice of the radio, and she's uncredited because she was Carpenter's wife at the time.
Yeah. My stance in the remakes thing is like it's absolutely the same movie, except the alien is different.
The alien is one person. It's not everything. It's not like it could be.
The alien has the same goal to kill everybody. It's just in a different method.
Paul, you know why? Paul, it's a remake. It's a remake because it's the same title, but even better, it's more so like the book. The alien in Carpenter's version.
Look, here's everything.
And then you have a scene where
an alien threat
to see who the thing
military and scientists, Arctic conditions in both. Literally, the only thing that's different is what type of alien it is. Everything else is exactly the same.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It's an alien
They don't
attacking
stop it
scientists
with
and military
electricity.
people in an Arctic setting, and an alien attacking military people and scientists in an Arctic setting.
I'm so happy every time I watch this scene. Oh, thank you, Rob Bottin.
I do like his
Okay,
spinach neck.
so we don't agree about the remake versus separate adaptation.
I wasn't going to bring that up, by the way. You brought that up.
Are you taking a minute, Adam?
Am I taking a minute? Yeah, I'm taking a minute.
Isn't it the pinnacle of practical effects?
Even with the tongue right there, that tongue shot, that was reverse camera shot. That's why it looks so good.
I really miss practical effects. I feel like that's becoming a lost art with all the CGI.
Yeah.
Chris, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, you're not wrong. When I first started back in '97, there was a shitload more companies. It's a lot more of a niche industry now, but I think we're needed more than ever because you have a lot of bad CGI out there. I think you need really good combinations and blends to have like really good effects in a film.
Along with so many other things.
What's so great about films like this and not having, CGI, limited visual aspects to enhance scenes, but no CGI, is it all fell on 20-year-olds. Bottin was 20 years old. 20 fucking years old, man.
America is the most creative they've ever been.
Yeah, like a prodigy. He was a prodigy. And he worked for a year and a half straight with no days off. And you absolutely see the blood, sweat, and tears in the film. And it's such impeccable work. It's so good that the changeoheads that Bottin made in this film are so goddamn good. Stan Winston Studios did changeoheads for The Terminator. There were other changeoheads in other films in the mid and late 80s. And they were years later after this, and they still weren't as good as what Bottin did in this.
Yeah.
I
honestly think that this is the pinnacle of practical effects. I really do.
I could agree with that. That would be another top 5.
I hands down,
that'd be
like the stuff that you see in
one.
this film is like unreal. And
it looks good too.
And I don't think I've seen anything that was straight practical effects that looked half as good as this.